Consumer NZ has carried out its latest grocery survey, which it says shows strong public appetite for government action to improve access to affordable food. But more shockingly, it revealed a third of New Zealanders have needed help accessing food in the past year. And Consumer's chief executive says it should be a wake-up call that the country's grocery market is not working as it should. Jon Duffy said people are struggling to find quality food at affordable prices, and that we're not seeing any meaningful change at the supermarkets despite interventions such as the government's market study and the introduction of a grocery commissioner. And Jon joins me now. Jon, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How's it going?
It's going very good, my friend. Firstly, was it a surprise in the research or the study that showed 30% of people have needed help to put food on the table? And what forms did they use to access help?
Yeah, so firstly, it was a surprise. We checked and double-checked the numbers because it seemed really high, but that is what people are telling us. And the forms of help that they indicated they need, so borrowing off friends or family, and that could take the form of getting loans off friends or family, or having food supplied to them by friends or family. WINS assistance.
Food banks?
Also, food banks, and also borrowing, so, short-term lending, that sort of thing, just to make ends meet.
God. You've said the problem of food affordability needed to be addressed and that supermarkets are at the heart of it. Can you expand on that?
Well, it's where most New Zealanders access food. The Commerce Commission's market study had a really good look at what our shopping habits are, and despite the kind of slight uptick in online sales through COVID, actually most people get in their car or somehow get to a supermarket and do a weekly shop in person. And that's actually been confirmed by the findings in our latest survey. That hasn't actually changed that much. So, the majority of people want to do a weekly shop at a supermarket. So if people are struggling to afford food and supermarkets are the main source of food, then the supermarkets are the main source of the problem.
I know Consumer NZ has been very vocal about pricing practices in supermarkets. Can you tell us about some of the concerns that you have raised already and what you continue to be worried about?
Yeah, so there's kind of two buckets of concerns. The first is really simple, and most people will have experienced this. In fact, this latest survey tells us that most people have experienced this, sometimes multiple times per trip to the supermarket, but it's when the shelf price is different to what you actually get charged at the till. And at the moment, when that happens, if you check your receipt and you find out, usually you're probably at home, you've been charged 50 cents too much on your baked beans, most people go, it's only 50 cents, all right, I'm not going to do anything about it. Yeah. But what that means, and what the Grocery Commissioner has come out with recently and found, is that means New Zealanders are losing tens of millions of dollars every year across the economy due to slack pricing errors by the supermarket, and the supermarkets are profiting from this. Yeah. We think that actually the time's come for the government to step in here and go, all right, clearly the supermarkets don't see any reason why they should, improve their systems. They're not worried about being prosecuted under the Fair Trading Act, which is, where the offence comes from. If you mislead somebody about the price, i.e. the shelf price is different to the till price, that's a misrepresentation under the Fair Trading Act. In fact, there's Woolworths, the kind of parent company, and 3 Pack and Saves are currently being prosecuted by the Commerce Commission for this very thing. Yeah. Unfortunately, the fine rate under the Fair Trading Act is just clearly not enough to deter this kind of conduct continuing, or to spur the supermarkets into action to do more. So we think this is actually a really quick and easy win for Nicola Willis, who's now the minister who has responsibility for fixing the supermarket situation, by bringing in stronger rules that actually apply penalties that genuinely hurt businesses, supermarkets misrepresenting the price of goods.
And what would they look like, Jon? Because if they're already fined If they're already fined a lot, I don't know what the fines that the Pack and Saves and the Woolies would have got. What would the stronger rules look like?
Well, to give it some context, the last time a Pack and Save was prosecuted under the Fair Trading Act, it got a $70,000 fine.
Oh,
that's
geez.
a couple of hours
It's a
trading.
Saturday afternoon, isn't it?
So, yeah, it is for a major supermarket like that.
Yeah.
It is a pittance, and that's not to throw shade at the courts. They're just applying the laws. We need bigger penalties under the Fair Trading Act. So what could that look like was your question. Well, there could be bespoke subordinate regulations under the Fair Trading Act that just applied to supermarkets and just applied higher penalties to them, given the importance of people being able to shop around. So why are we hot under the collar about this? Well, people need to be able to compare prices to find out where the cheapest food is, because they need access to that food. Now, if one supermarket's misleading you about the price and the other supermarket's being honest, well, that honest supermarket gets dinged because they might have a more expensive tin of baked beans. So you'll go to the one that's misrepresenting the price of its baked beans. And that means they're profiting from, those slack systems that have allowed that false price to be published.
And then I don't know if they still do it now. I think they do, John. Sometimes they don't have a price on them at all. Like you'll go along, the eggs of some, but there'll be some brands that there's just no pricing. You must have had complaints about that. What is that?
We do. We get that more in other industries where there's no law requiring you to put a price on a product.
Really?
But if you do put a price on it, it can't be misleading. So that's how it works. But it would be very rare to find an industry that was consistently not pricing its products. So that could be just oversight.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that that's anything misleading or deceptive. It's probably just slack practices.
Sure. You mentioned Nicola Willis, the Minister of Finance, and she is in charge of this, and you have shared stats with her. And I know, and we know too, that the government kicked off a request for information process to explore how new entrants could help increase competition, because that's what we need, isn't it? It's more competition at the end of the day. And they also appointed a grocery commissioner, I don't even know how long ago, and I don't even know what he's done. So I feel, John, that the urgency is real. You know that, I know that, people listening know that. Do you really feel the government feels that? What response did you get from Nicola Willis?
I was actually quite impressed with her response.
Okay.
She really understood the scope of the issue, and let's be clear. This is not an easy problem to solve. This is a wicked problem in our society, and supermarkets are just doing what the market structures have allowed them to do. Right? They've gobbled up all their competitors. They've boiled the industry down to two players basically, and they're profiting from that. And that's what monopolists and duopolists have done for centuries. And that's kind of why we have competition law to regulate the greatest harms of that. But they're not necessarily doing anything illegal, or there are some activities that certainly the Commerce Commission has taken them to court on. So this isn't an easy problem to solve. And, one of the, in my opinion, where we'll get to is there needs to be some sort of structural change to the industry, which will inevitably mean breaking up some of the existing players in some way, shape or form. And that's a huge thing, particularly for a centre-right government. And you can argue how centre-right they are, given the coalition members. But
I see what you're saying.
Particularly for what is more traditionally a more business-friendly type of government. Yeah, we're talking about expropriating supermarkets here. And that is a live possibility that is clearly on the table. I do sense perhaps the government is, based on the minister's public comments around when she announced the RFI process. I do get a sense that perhaps they're hoping maybe one of the supermarket chains will voluntarily divest some brands off. I don't know, maybe Foodstuffs might sell Pack and Save or something like that. I think that's wishful thinking.
I was going to say, what's the probability of a well-performing, profitable business going, hey, you know what, let's just get rid of this guy? Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there was anything voluntary to happen, I think you'd probably see the least profitable parts of the business being offered up as a sacrifice.